drug problem, then his or her response should be, as a politician, it's none of my business. Thank you.
Now it's time to raise your questions. Do we have any questions?
Okay. Thank you to you both for your very interesting expositions. I have just one comment regarding Robert's exposition. I agree also with Chris with everything, and I think it's very important what you did, because sometimes people who adhere to libertarianism are afraid to be critical of certain things that in a libertarian society may or may not happen, but maybe because of being afraid of being considered conservative or something like that, we are not clear enough in those issues. And I think it's very important to say that you can perfectly consider that drug abuse is horrible and deplorable, and at the same time say that it should be allowed.
Okay, thank you both for your speech. My name is Erin Colbo, and my question is to the first speaker. So, obviously, drug criminalization works on the scale of countries such as Portugal, but how can we be ensured that it would work on bigger states? And my example for this would be in China during the 17th and during the 18th century, there was an opium crisis when opium was legal because it was imported by the British, and 15% of the population was addicted, which is a very high percentage.
Well, you know, that's an interesting question. I've often wondered about that. Opium was consumed all over the world. And why is it that we have the history telling us that only the Chinese had this big problem? I mean, lots of opium in the Middle East, still consumed today throughout the world. And I often wonder if history wasn't written by the victors, in the sense that because they wanted to make the British look worse and to fortify their own arguments, that they're saying, well, this problem was bigger than it might have been, because this is what happened. Legal authorities always exaggerate a crisis because it allows them to take more power. So I wonder about that. So I'm not really sure that that's accurate. But I've read these things too. But read them, but I didn't accumulate that data. And I'd like to actually go back and try to find out more about that data. I have friends I know today that consume opium, and opium is a different kind of drug. And the image of the opium dens were these people that were lying, comatose, basically. But in fact, it's a drug that alerts the senses. So I really wonder about that particular thing. We don't know what would happen in a larger society, but what we do know, if you look at the numbers, again, in the United States, and there's some fairly reliable numbers, the illegal consumption of marijuana that's been going on for decades hasn't caused the society to collapse. So the impacts, we're not really sure. The tragedy, in a sense, is that we're going to see, it's not a tragedy, it's a good thing. We're going to see decriminalization of certainly marijuana in the United States, but not for the right reasons. Politicians are going to do it for the money. They're doing it for the tax revenue. They're not doing it to help out that poor black guy that shouldn't have been in prison. They don't care about that. They don't care about the person who could have received marijuana for a medical treatment. They don't care about it. Now they smell the money. They'll do it for the wrong reason, but they're going to be forced to do it. So it's going to happen in the United States. And I suspect the United States will not suffer any catastrophic collapse as a consequence.
Can I just add something? I don't know what would happen if drugs were legalized on a larger scale. But what I do know is this, is that the war on drugs has been a failure. And it has been a consistent failure. And so we know what the problems are at the moment.
And costly.
Yeah. I think she has.
Well, maybe somebody else will come back to you.
I have a question for Professor White. I agree with you on that, drug abuse is not cool and has a lot of harmful effects. but should we reclassify what we consider to be a drug? Because we, by that principle, and based on what we consider a drug right now, I could be kicked out of AUPG for lighting up a joint, and I could also be kicked out of AUPG for shooting up heroin. Same principle, same rule, they're both drugs. Meanwhile, you and I are addicted to caffeine, you with your Red Bull, me with my coffee. Caffeine is also a stimulant. It is heavily abused. So on that principle, should we also be thrown out for drinking coffee?
I think that's a good question. There is an issue in terms of how you define drugs, because it is correct that caffeine is a psychotropic drug, and therefore it's the same medical classification as drugs such as heroin, opium, and so on. In terms of morality, I think you have to make a distinction in terms of what effects these drugs have on the human body and the human mind. I was talking in terms of generalities because I have a 10-minute talk and I can't go into specific distinctions. I think there are distinctions to be made there. Exactly where you draw the line, I'm not clear. I'm not a medical professional. I don't have to be medical professionals who do make that distinction. Clearly, yes, alcohol, caffeine, these are drugs. I think it's appropriate to call them drugs, but they're drugs that have different effects than other types of drugs. So I was speaking in general terms, but what I had in mind was those drugs that are not used. This was why I keep talking about recreational drug use. That drugs that are not used for medical purposes, or drugs that have no negative effect, or at least as far as we know, no negative effect on the body and the mind. But it's true, yes, there are distinctions to be made there. There's some drugs that are bad drugs, and there are some drugs that are okay, like caffeine. I'm a caffeine addict. This is true. Alcohol, I don't drink alcohol, but I don't see anything wrong with drinking alcohol. That's fine. I agree that there are different types of drugs.
Yeah, so my question is, what can we do if the government doesn't want to get rid of the drug-related businesses, and in case of Mexico, when the corruption is ingrown, and I've been recently writing this paper on this topic, and I found out that if we get rid of drug-related businesses in Mexico, the economy would shrink by 63%. So what can we do in this case? It's going to harm the state.
I didn't quite understand the question. So you are saying, you are asking if the government legalizes these businesses, or whether it gets rid of the businesses?
Yeah.
So we're talking about legalization.
The impact on GDP would be based on what? Sorry.
As we're talking about legalization, so these are businesses that the current status in Mexico, they're criminal organizations, correct? Okay, we're talking about the legalization of those businesses.
Okay, so I'll rephrase my question. So if we want to legalize, but the government would be against it, so how can we proceed with that?
Well, I don't think the government should be against it. I think they should leave it alone. I think governments, if the government legalizes, I can't see any reason why it would be against those drugs. I don't think the governments are keen to legalize drugs. I think the government is quite happy to have people taking drugs. I think this is an easy way to control the population. I think it's a very easy way to arrest people.
The demonstration effect is going to be quite powerful, I think, in the sense that they're trying desperately to ignore Portugal. Right? They're ignoring it. But, and this has been on since 2001. I mean, this is a headline story. The things I showed you, big deal. The other demonstration effect is the impact on tax revenue, like in Colorado and Oregon, places where it's become available recreational, Nevada, several states in the United States. So, politicians want two things. They want power and they want money. And, being able to raise tax money from marijuana. When I was a student, I'm a great advocate for drug policy, or drug decriminalization, because I don't consume them anymore, but I consumed a lot of them when I was young. So I know what they do and what they are, but I have no interest in consuming them anymore. So I had a good friend in India who was a big pothead. He was a terrible spokesman because he was a lethargic guy with wild hair, and he was incoherent when he spoke. What we're going to see, I think, is this demonstration effect that politicians will see that this is a honeypot, and they're going to go after it. I hope that's what will happen.
Like a couple of days ago, I was looking into a World Bank paper. It was quite a lengthy one, quantitative paper. But what caught my eye was that they had some research there specifically on cocaine, and what they were trying to do is figure out what would happen with the use of cocaine if they legalized it. And the regressions basically showed that the use would nearly double. I mean, it's in the United States only. And they were trying to compare the negative externality effect of, the double the use of cocaine to the current effect of, the current use of cocaine. And they were, in a way, acknowledging that the war on drugs is a failure, as you already mentioned, purely economically. But they were also saying that it's a good enough price to pay in order to keep the negative externality lower. So would you in a way say that the negative externality and its price is worth it if you cancel out on the war of drugs? So comparing the cost of legalizing drugs, such as say cocaine, to the benefit of keeping them illegal.
I think they're probably wrong in their estimate. We don't know, but I would suggest to you, if we look back over the last 30 or 40 years with respect to drug use, there have been these sort of waves of, there was a crack epidemic until it wasn't. There was a cocaine epidemic until there wasn't. Now there's an opioid epidemic until there won't be. So again, all of these were these sort of constructs by those people who gained benefits from these drug policies to maintain them and to get more resources and to get people to give up more freedoms. Now, cocaine use, I remember the attraction to cocaine use when it really hit it big. If you look back, the guys that had cocaine had all the women because they had money. And the women came to them because they had money and cocaine. So everybody was drawn to this. So if you make it legal, a lot of that sort of star attraction appeal disappears. I think, and young people sometimes like to do things that are dangerous or go against the authoritarian structures. Marijuana consumption, when I was a kid, a lot of it was like, saying, I don't like this oppressive state, and it was now if you'd taken that out, the consumption might have been less rather than more. So I think on those just sort of, and these are just sort of impressionistic suggestions from experience in consuming drugs, that the attraction may disappear. And it may become less than, say, alcohol consumption.
Aren't these anecdotal examples in comparison to like empirical evidence?
What's empirical? Where do they get the numbers? You said if it's a suggestion. You're saying if they were legalized, it would happen. Well, it didn't. So they're just estimating based upon some assumptions. You have to look at their assumptions.
Yeah.
But it's not empirical. It's just a guess. Empirical suggests they've got data collected from what happened after they decriminalized and legalized, in my view.
What do you think it would happen if we legalize drugs in Western countries? Because you saw on fact that we have a problem with accepting new things, different things like legalizing marriages, gay marriages, or legalizing drugs, etc.
Do you think are you asking a question? Do you think it will be legalized, or do you think?
Well, what would happen if it
Some
were?
people will react in the government.
I have no idea. I think I think if they've reached a stage in which they're prepared to legalize these drugs, then I think they'll be accepting of it. But, I mean, I don't know.
But it's like alcohol in a sense. I mean, think about it. I mean, there's a lot of consumption of alcohol here. But all the people that consume alcohol can all of a sudden start doing cocaine or marijuana. And we don't necessarily know how many are doing it anyway, illicitly. And again, without apparent harmful effects. I mean, because we don't really have good numbers on what cocaine use is. Again, these are estimates. But you know, I have a lot of friends that consume some sort of drug every day and have responsible jobs, some of them at high levels. It doesn't necessarily, if you take the abuse in the sense of excessive, I would even say these guys are abusing it to a extent, but they have productive lives. It doesn't destroy their lives necessarily. But we do know these examples where it can. Usually, it's addicted people whose lives are destroyed. They'll find something to be addicted to. You know? People with strong will escape it. I had friends that were heroin addicts. Some of them died, some of them walked away. I've had some friends that are alcoholics. Some of them died, some of them walked away. You know, we don't know how it's going to really play out.
I think the point to make is that whether a person is addicted to something does not